Start rocking and rolling?
Let's do it.
Oh, alrighty, let's do it. Let's see. Okay, it looks to me, I think we're live, Michelle. So
Okay,
nice to
great.
see you. So hello, everybody who's watching. It's a real pleasure to have you here. My name is Dustin Cormier, and we're watching an episode of How to Rock Astrology today. Thank you to my audience for hanging out with me, and as well to Michele Olree's audience as well. Am I saying your name correct, Michele? Michele Olree?
Yeah, it's quite complicated, but Olree is okay.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, it's so nice to have you here, Michele.
Thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure. Now, Michele, I caught interest in you on YouTube because you've been doing this for a little while. I've noticed that you have a lot of videos talking about the new moon and how it unfolds into the full moon and what this means for each sign for each month that it happens. I love your style because not only do you cater to the signs and you show the new moon and the full moon transits happening, but you also include things like, I just recently watched your one, I believe it would have been the full moon in Aries. And you also include, like the fact that at the start of this month, Saturn, Mars, and Venus were all in Aquarius. And you include that in your moon readings. So I thought that was very interesting. When I got into you further, I realized that you're into lots of things that I've been interested in for a long time, including starseed consciousness. Yeah. This idea that the world, our planet, is evolving into something very important. It always has been. The starseed consciousness is something that's very intriguing to me. So I was very excited to contact you and to find out that you wanted to do an interview on my channel.
Yeah, so I'm really happy to be here, and yeah, we can talk a little bit about all that. Yeah, kind of in my videos on my YouTube channel, I talk a little bit about the general energies. So I look at the kind of like I see the chart as kind of a story. So when I zoom into a chart, I'm looking at the planet positions and also at the energies that it kind of gives me. So it's true. I look at Saturn, right? So what do people need to learn? Kind of like the hard lessons of the moment. But I also look at opportunities.
Beautiful.
And it's kind of when I start with the video, it's like a channel is opening up. So on one hand, I'm reading what is on the chart, but at the same time, it's like almost like something through me is talking. So it kind of like really fluent. And very often I find that what I've been saying in astrology or the other way around, it all aligns together. So if I would say something in astrology and I shuffle the cards, the exact cards come out what we just talked about.
No kidding.
It's like, even in my private sessions, sometimes I'm like, whoa, it's mind blowing how synchronicity like works. And even today, I was like, my number is 144. And literally today, it's the 11th of April. And we started at 4 my time, which is 11:44. I was like, another alignment going on.
Wow, wonderful. It's amazing that you can see these things and catch them happening. 144 is a very sacred number in Vedic consciousness.
Is it?
It is. It's very interesting. There's a few reasons for it. My brain is not picking up why that's a sacred number, but I just thought I'd throw that at you because it's very interesting for that to be your number.
Yeah, it's always when back in alignment, you see these double numbers, right? And that's kind of like, you're on the right synchronicity.
Yeah. Well, what's amazing to me is this idea of intuitive astrology. For everybody watching, I should say that Michele here has her own website, and it's called loveforintuitiveastrology.com. So it seems to me that you bring in a lot of intuition into the stuff that you do as an astrologer. And that's an amazing thing. You know, I could really feel like when you were reading the Leo rising for the month of April for the new moon and the full moon, I feel like you were tapping into the experience of a person who would be living through the moon energies and all the other energies that you described. It's an intuition, which I think everybody can kind of have at some level. Like, you know, if somebody's going to roll a bowling ball down an alley, we have an intuition due to the projection and trajectory of how much force we threw. We kind of feel where it's probably going to go. I think that's an intuition that everybody kind of has, although not everybody puts the value on it to sharpen it and refine it. So do you consider yourself to be somebody who channels, you know, like, do you, you know, as you're saying, when you unfold the cards, do you do any kind of active channeling consciousness, or do you just open up and read what the cards say and you're just, wow, like you weren't even trying to pick up on the information?
I mean, it's really like, I do feel I'm tuning in some type of energy. Like I need to be in a certain headspace to do readings. So, you know, you need to kind of clear your mind. So everything that comes through is like pure intention. So I make sure that myself, my own opinion is kind of aside. So I really trained with a lot of meditation. So everybody can do this. Like, you know, if there's people out there who say like, oh, you know, it's only me who can be like this and nobody else can. That's not true. Like I wasn't even into this for a long time, but I have to say that some people are born with a certain consciousness already due to past life, you know, experiences. So some people had a few lifetimes really already experiencing this intuition, so it's easier for them to tap into it. And other souls are just more focused on different aspects of life.
Denser.
Yeah.
The gross material aspects of life, I guess.
Yeah. And it's like, if everybody would like tune into their own intuition, their life would be so much easier.
It's a funny thing because, you know, I think that what in most esoteric and mystical traditions, I think many people are trying to provide a tantra to these two dimensions of cognition. One of them is, you know, the scientific, fact-based observation of empirical evidence, which can really ground the intuitive process. But you don't want the empirical process to negate the ability for the heart and the mind to open up to intuitions that are beyond rational reason. Because that can happen for those who are purely rational, scientific minded. I always like to use Tantra. I'm really a Vedic person. And that's why Tantra for me, the idea of just like when two people make love, it's the Scorpio in me, I guess, that always thinks of these metaphors. You know, there's a melting pot of consciousness that needs to happen with two people in order for it to be the smoothest. And I think that that's the same thing with this duality of rational mind and intuition. Would you say that? Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you saying that, Michele. Now, what I'm interested in doing, Michele, I should tell everybody who's watching, we probably have a combination of people from your audience as well as people from my audience today. For everybody watching, thanks for hanging out with us. If anybody would like to ask any questions, if anybody would like to do, you know, this is a live stream and we're here and me and Michele can both see your questions. So if anybody feels like asking anything to prompt a conversation, feel free. If not, me and Michele are just going to hang out and do our thing. Now,
hello, everybody.
Nice to see y'all. Now, eventually, at some point in this conversation, Michele, I often bring people onto my show. For this astrology interview series in particular, I often will just ask the person I'm interviewing what is their experience of jumping into the water of being a professional astrologer? It's a whole world in itself. It takes a little bit of psychological counseling practice of some sorts. Some people say that you should really, really ground yourself in some kind of education, or take some kind of school for a certain amount of years. So I'd love to wrap with you a little bit about your experiences jumping into professional astrology on top of all this sort of mystical stuff that we'd like to talk about. And I'd kind of like to get into the mystical thing first. Before we roll with that, I'll say, Michele, I've made a little picture of your chart, and it's basically your chart combined with the Chinese animals of the day that you're born. Are you into the East Asian Chinese astrology at all? Bazi?
I don't know a lot about it, but I think I'm a metal horse.
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah, so hardworking.
Yep. Yep. And the horse, you can't really rein them in. They say that their mind is just, my brother's in the year of the metal horse, and we're in a band, and he's a nutcase. And he's a Gemini, so there's a lot of extra nutcase in there. What I was going to say, Michele, if you're interested, I'd love to display this picture and to just give everybody a little bit of a sense of the energy of the person that I'm interviewing today. Would you be interested in that?
Sure.
And I should say, thank you, Michele. I love it. And I should say to everybody that I had asked your permission to show this, and I don't typically show the actual birth date and birth time. I just like to show the chart just to give an idea, like I said, of the energy of who we're talking to today. So let's see if I can make this happen. I often like to make my own little sort of picture here, and it looks a little bit like this. So this is Michele Olree's chart, everybody. Now, I should say, Michele, that I'm a Vedic astrologer, and oftentimes I like to show things that you can understand through Vedic astrology. Well, the first thing I'll say is that you're in the year of the metal horse, and you're in the day of the water dog. It would interest everybody to know that my day is the water horse. And the horse and the dog are in like a trine, just like how, Gemini and Aquarius are in a trine. I was excited to talk to you because these trines in Chinese astrology are similarly a good thing. Dog is a real intuitive person, but again, also practical and grounded. It's a metal sign, but when it has water, it uses its intuition to ground its rational thought. I wonder if you relate to that at all.
Absolutely. I think because my number is number 7, and this is exactly so I'm really intuitive, but I'm also very grounded and practical. I think the people who see me on the outside would be surprised to know that I'm actually into the spiritual work, because in my outside life, I'm living this very grounded life where I also I run a business and I also do astrology. So I'm kind of feeding in these two sides of myself. So it's like one side needs to be practical, and the other side, I like to explore. And I mean, you see my 9th house. So obviously I want to know everything about everything. And I get a sense that you're kind of similar because you have the Sag moon. Yep. So you also like to explore, right? And know
certainly
things.
You got it.
Yeah. Endless wonderful curiosity.
I love that, Michele. And it's very interesting to me that you have this powerful stellium. A lot of people in our generation have a similar fixation here with Uranus and Neptune in the sign of Capricorn. This was, our year around our area was a time when these two came into a great conjunction in Capricorn. You have Saturn in Capricorn there with that. For this to be in your 3rd house, it's interesting that the 3rd house relates to communicating about intuitive processes, about really very psychedelic things implied by Uranus and Neptune. Having Saturn there means that Saturn's in its own sign in Capricorn. which means this is a Saturn that will not float away like a hot air balloon and not able to do, to not become able to do work on Earth. You're somebody who is still grounded on Earth, but you're forced at some point in this life to mix your earthy groundedness with the wild extraterrestrial consciousness that comes through you, I think, through Uranus and Neptune, and to communicate it because it's in the third house. Would you say you resonate with that?
Yeah, and with Saturn there, I definitely when I was a child, I was very shy and introverted. So it's really strange that I went from really shy through like studies and traveling and everything. I became more extroverted. So the people who meet me today see an extrovert who's very comfortable talking, but that came through a lot of practice. So that totally makes sense with the communication.
Yeah.
And also, part of it is for me like the intellect, and part of it can be channeling. So it's like if I open up my consciousness, it's like somebody can talk through me.
Yeah.
And this can be done in writing as well. So I had like a blog, and suddenly after my spiritual awakening, I started writing poetry, writing like I would write a blog post in like 10 minutes and I wouldn't even know what I wrote down. It would be like I would type something and it would create a really good story. So after this consciousness kind of expanded, I felt like new talents came in and I got access to much more knowledge and information. So this is kind of where it all started, the whole journey, right? And from there on, we kind of went into astrology.
Right.
And that's why it got like a mix of the two.
Well, it's funny how astrology can be like that. I got into astrology in order to try to disprove it. I got into it because I thought everybody was living in their head and just being weirdos. And I said, all right, I'm going to get into astrology to just try and disprove this to people. And then I ended up saying, oh my God, this is actually amazing. I love the process that you're talking about. The third house is such a powerful place to have Uranus and Neptune and Saturn conjunction. You being a Scorpio rising, it's everybody, I'm sure, is going to be looking with wide eyes at this Pluto conjunct the ascendant in Scorpio, in the sign that is said to be the arena of Pluto. So for me, that there's some incredible volcanic energy happening in this ascendant. And, it's very interesting to me for a Scorpio rising to have the depth and research capacity that Scorpio does. For you to have these three these outer planets really in the third house shows that you have the ability to dive deeply in an intuitive way to tap into the third house communication. And it comes through in a grounded, constructive, practical way. There's so many things that my brain is branching into. Are you interested in psychedelic consciousness at all, Michele? Have you ever considered the idea of using psychedelic substances and medicines like mushrooms, for example, to instigate ecstatic states of mind that might open or, at least engage your consciousness in a different way, and to engage your intuition in a different way?
I've never tried it. I know some of my friends have tried it. But definitely, I think just after my spiritual awakening, it was like I was on drugs all the time. I'm pretty sure it feels really similar, like seeing through dimensions. And I kind of managed to ground it. I mean, Pluto in the ascendant is like, it kind of transforms you. So it's kind of a continuous rebirth. And I made a video about it, and that's why a lot of clients I have today, I'm kind of helping through this Pluto process. Because with the ascendant, it's kind of you're born with this heavy karmic lessons, right? So it's like you're constantly walking to a wall, like no, and it's like, okay, let's see what it's like to lose everything. Let's lose everything and start over and start over. So
wow, no kidding.
It's like slowly in the process, you learn how to detach. So I've been having many clients to help them get through it. And I got like a perspective on what it means that a lot of people with Pluto on the ascendant, they were born with a lot of heavy karma. So, you know, and it's like the only way to transmute it and transform it is to face it and to actually go through it and meditate it. And the more you meditate and dissolve it, so astrology can very well explain the why, and the spiritual side can help you how to transform it. So, and obviously that was something I had to go through myself. Sure. And I came to a point where my life wasn't this anymore. It was like up, down, ups, downs, and it becomes calmer and calmer and calmer and calmer. And now it's like, you know, little bumps, but it does take a lot of work. But if you let go of control, which very often happens with Pluto there, right? It's like you want to have things a certain way. But the more you're letting go and like grow and turn it into inner power. Yeah. And, you know, like I'm just me and I keep the energy with me, and the external, everything that happens on the external side doesn't matter. The conditional side. As long as I stay grounded. Yeah.
Wow. You know, Michele, that's amazing. I myself have been, this is something I wanted to ask you about. I myself have been very involved lately with meditation and with Kriya yoga, and with this same sort of sense of, you know, life is really throwing the sacred ghee onto the fire in order to make it even hotter, and to sit with the fire in the heat that eliminates and emancipates your karma of whatever it is in your soul that you've been sent here to work through. And the more I get into yoga and meditation, what is often talked about at the high end of meditation is that, you know, a lot of people seek liberation from suffering through meditation. And the difficulty that a lot of people have to, you know, they wrangle and they try to get in tune with is that oftentimes the difficult things in your life don't stop happening. What happens instead is that you grow a distance from it. You don't identify with it. You identify with the pure awareness and intelligence that understands that everything that happens to you is a part of a greater process of your evolution. So for you to have that Pluto ascendant there, I imagine that you go through bumps, as you said. I'm sure that you go through all sorts of fancy bumps related to your life path, related to your projection and understanding of yourself. Having the Lord of what I would call the ninth house, in my understanding, it seems to me that you've got the cusp of the ninth house in Cancer, which is typical for Scorpio rising. And so the moon, which rules Cancer, this is a Vedic idea. In the Vedic astrology, they say that the dispositor of a sign, the planet that rules a sign, is channeling that house's energy. It's very interesting to me that you have a sort of, you know, the ninth house kind of relates to almost religion, almost like ethics and philosophy, and is almost like a warrior energy for trying to fulfill a role. For this to be in the first house, or at least the sign that's holding your first house cusp, it's sort of really very close to the 12th house cusp. So it's really got a 12th house energy as well as a first house energy because it's in the sign of the rising sign. So you've got your ninth lord, the moon, around this first and 12th house area. It seems to me that you've probably put a lot of ethical intention. It's to sort of being a warrior for the explorations of your meditation and of going through the experiences that you do in order to show other people that they can do it too.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very funny because I have this painting. It's like a cheetah because I went to do a session with a shaman And he was like, your spirit animal is a cheetah. So he said, like, you spend a lot of lifetimes being a warrior, and you can kind of let go of this concept, but being like more like a peaceful warrior now. So he, like the beginning of my life, I saw everything as like, there's war. So I would be suspicious. I mean, you're Scorpio, so you relate to this as well. Like seeing everything as a suspicion. Can I trust this person? Can I, you know?
Totally.
But it's like to face everything through strength. And now it's like everything that even if it's heavy doesn't feel heavy anymore, because it's more like, okay, I've been there, done that.
Right.
And I'm ready to help other people to see the bright side of life, that everything has a reason. Because without astrology and knowing why things happen to you, people get really lost, you know, like why these things constantly happen to me. So even through sessions or something like that, I kind of want to reaffirm to them, like, hey, what's going on with you? It's totally normal, you know, because if you don't know about past lives, ancestral lines, you know, like with Pluto on the ascendant, like if people come in, I'm like, yeah, there's been this heavy energy boiling through all the generations.
Yeah.
And it's been heavier. And then there's the Pluto on the ascendant that gets all the basically shit from all the whole line, you know, with respect to the ancestor. But, you know, and then it needs to be released, because somebody needs to release this energy from the DNA, because otherwise it's going to be too heavy. So there needs to be someone that's opening up spiritually and be aware to heal that. So
very interesting, Michele. Do you think that Pluto often is a signifier for a confrontation with ancestral energy, and what often some people call 7 generations of ancestors behind your present incarnation? Especially for Pluto to be in the first house, there's a bit of a confrontation of that sort.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've seen it with Saturn as well. Saturn on the ascendant. So it's kind of a similar thing. Pluto is more confrontational with darkness, I would say. And Saturn is this heavy responsibility, like you're carrying the world on your shoulders kind of thing.
Right.
And with Pluto, it's like people attack you for no reason, you know, or like, because you have this power energy and people don't know how to transmute it. So then they get this really violent, you know, they say the penetrating eyes and this violent look. But when they own this power and use it for good, so transforming it to the highest like octave of Pluto, the kind of the violent energy transmutes into light.
Right. It's the Minerva aspect of Pluto. They say that there's the dark Shiva energy that comes through and really cuts your head off. But once you don't have a head, you got no head to lose. And now you are, you know, there can be a real divine saint energy associated with a Pluto that has exhumed and burned away all possible, all of the egotistical desires to get on top of the painful things that the Pluto person is experiencing, and to let go in the way that you're talking about. It's very interesting to me. And I'm very interested in, you know, I love how you said that you still garner a respect for what your ancestors have been doing. It just might very well be that some people can't, some of our ancestors behind us might not have been able to deal with the Pluto aspects of your generational ancestral DNA and karma. And it's just like every heavy spiritual aspect with astrology. On the material plane, it seems like I've got an obstruction and I got to go through it somehow. And, you know, I roll, that sucks. But from a spiritual perspective, this kind of confrontation is like, finally, I can deal with this underlying thing that I've been wanting to deal with for a long time. You know, as a yoga person, I find I go throughout my whole day, and, you know, like if I go a few days without really doing some yoga, you know, it's great because I don't have to deal with things in my body. I can keep doing the things I want to do. But when I got to work out my hips and I got to open my hips or I got to stretch my lower lumbar spine and I actually do it, I think in my head, God, I wish I had just been peeling away at this like sort of earlier, you know? And it's a wonderful thing from a spiritual perspective to be confronted with these heavy outer planet energies.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like doing shadow work. So I think that's one of in the sessions, I kind of look at people's shadow side as well. And I'm trying to bring it in a light way, in a more optimistic way for people to show that shadow side, because I think that's one of the biggest keys to their healing, like the patterns that kind of keep happening and like bumping your head against the wall, you know, and it's just several aspects that can show you that you're going to certain patterns. And for some people it's work, you know, for some people it's relationships, for some people it's family. So having this knowledge makes it, I think, a little bit softer to work with that. It's like,
to deal,
to deal with it. Yeah.
That totally makes sense to me, Michele. You know, something you prompted an intuition in my head of something that this is just an interesting thing of applying intuition. Intuition is a magical thing. You know, I've had experiences where there was a time when I had an experience with mushrooms where I tried an experiment. And what I did was I sat with my notebook. I had my notebook. And what I decided to do was I was just sitting and, you know, a flow of consciousness was coming through me that was not my usual state of thinking. And I started writing down and having a conversation with my own unconscious. I said, hello, who are you? And what came through me is I wrote down spontaneously, just like it just came to me, is that I am an Egyptian princess from 10,000 years ago incarnated as Dustin Cormier. And that's what kind of like I wrote down, and I thought it was silly at first. And then I was communicating with what feels to me to be something that might be legitimate in my ancestral karma. I don't know for sure, but it was an interesting engagement of my unconscious. Now, for me, seeing you having the Neptune, Capricorn, Saturn conjunction, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, stellium in Capricorn in your third house, it seems to me like you might apply, you know, do you feel like you apply this sort of unconscious libidinal drawing out to the people and to the clients that come to you, I guess with consent and with their consent to be that kind of channeler? Do you experience something similar to that when you do astrology charts for people?
So I kind of always a little bit sense how far it can go so what level the client can handle. So with some people, it's pure astrology. I look at their chart and we look at the planets, you know, but I do get also clients that are very spiritual, already very far in their spiritual journey. So then we go to past lives and I check it with the notes, and then I do past life readings. And one of the really amazing experiences, like you said, you had like a conversation with someone from a past life, and you think to yourself, like, am I talking nonsense here? Because you're not really sure until I sit down with my mom one time and she was like, hey, can you like read my past lives? And I was like, okay, you know, let's sit down, I'll tune in, let's see what comes up. And I remember from like previous workshops and sessions, people saw me in this like big dresses in a kind of this Renaissance time. And I'm reading her life. And it's funny because I could never really make the person that I was because it was some type of royalty. And this is when it becomes interesting because you can look it up. But I never knew who exactly until I tuned into my mom. And I was like, we were born in Vienna, and we see these dresses and
an aristocratic time.
it's so crazy because we had some karma in this lifetime, right? And I was like, you were my mom, but not officially my mom. It's like you were taking care of me. And I started talking about this lifetime. And we were like, shall we just look it up on Wikipedia to see if that matches it? So what year? Okay, 17th century, Vienna, castle. And we started tuning into this life. And then I looked up, I think it was Maria Teresa or something.
Wow.
And it said,
that's amazing.
Mother, like that she had someone who acted as her mother. And this is the mind-blown thing. My mom's name is Anne Marie. This woman was called Marie Cologne or Marie something.
Wow.
And it was exactly the whole story. And this is when I was like, I'm not talking nonsense. It's actually, we had this confirmation that, no, it was mind-blowing that the whole story, and it added up to everything. And I was like, wow, because normally you get like lives where you live in a village, you cannot look it up. And this was the one particular life that you can look up. So it was mind-blowing.
Because there was only so many wealthy people back in the 17th century. Pretty much the majority of everybody was a peasantry, and the aristocratic classes were probably at like the 1% of the time, you know? So you at that time, it would have been easier for you to look up this kind of thing because there was less of that.
Yeah, because I mean, I've seen some of the other lives, but you know, like it was not something you can look up. But this was the only thing. And because I tuned into someone else, and the story kind of added up, because very often we kind of switch roles. So it's like you, and it's often what I see relates to astrology as well. So for example, I saw that my dad was my daughter, and then and then I see that the moon was on like south node moon. So it kind of also makes sense, like mother, moon, south node. So,
wow, that's very interesting. I almost want to check my own parents' see if my south node relates to any of the personal planets of my parents, just to, you know, there's so much interesting things to talk about here. One of the things that's interesting to me is that I find when people bring up the question of ancestors, especially people who are not tuned into this sort of consciousness, you know, a lot of people would think like my mother and my father are my ancestors, and then my grandparents are part of that ancestry. But if there is this, you know, if in some kind of past life, you and your parents have switched roles, it seems to me that there is like, I believe in soulmates. I believe that people have been enmeshed throughout many lifetimes, and they meet each other and bond in these karmic ways. For that to be the case, because I've had experiences really where I've had a similar karma with my mother, where she birthed me in this life, and you know, it's almost like she owed me, because my mother loved me, and I was so lucky to have a good mother who took care of me while I just was a friggin' weird dumbass teenager, and she still held it down for me, and she still supports me so much. It's almost like she doesn't have to do these things. I don't think she owes me anything, but she just does it. She just does it. So maybe it's possible that I did the same thing for her in a past life, which means that maybe we each have our own ancestry, and we are, you know, my mother and father. I don't, you know, if I think about my ancestors, I don't necessarily have to go through the biological ancestry. Is that something, you know, do you agree with kind of at least what I'm playing with here with this consciousness?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes I meditate and I get a little bit of information. I mean, it's always like the universe is so big, so you don't really exactly know. But what I understand is that we are like kind of, you have your own soul group, and you kind of, mixed roles. So like you said, there's soulmates. So it can be friends, it can be parents. So
like pets.
it can be pets, you know,
Yep.
like so they come on your path to support you or make your life really difficult, like you don't know. Like sometimes somebody gets the rule to make your life difficult in order for you to grow, and that's just as much a soulmate as someone who's
Yeah.
supporting you, depending on what has been the past karma, because kind of what you reap is what you sow, if I say
Mm.
that correctly. So
Yeah.
if you hurt someone in the past, they can come back to set it straight.
Mm. That's very
And
interesting. I
so I
find that
always
I,
say, just forgive, you know?
yeah,
If,
right, right. I totally get that. You know, I find this is maybe is just a me thing. You know, I've got Saturn in my seventh house in Aquarius. Because I'm a Leo rising and I have Saturn in the seventh. And one of the things that I often find myself doing when I'm going through relationships is that I've got to, maybe this is just me, a me thing, where Saturn is really learning to hold a relationship, even when there's junk between me and my partner. And I hold it down with my partner for a long time. I've gone out with people in relationships where, you know, I would have a long-term relationship with them, and I would try to amicably, when we both realize that it's not functionally working out, we've gone through a lot of pain with each other, but we still love each other. And I have this experience where I can't just leave this person because we help each other. You know, I'm a yoga person and I've helped my past partners get a hold of themselves while they've allowed me to forgive my often too rigid, hard Aquarian attitude about certain things. I got Saturn just coming through my ears. And all of my partners helped me to loosen up and to let go of
yeah,
control and these sorts of things. And what often happens is when we both amicably let go of the relationship that we're presently in, and it always ends up being the same thing, is that we are soulmates. And just because you are a soulmate with someone doesn't mean they are meant to be the lover that you would spend the rest of your life with in a loving marriage sort of way.
yeah,
So I think there's a real bid there for, again, meditation, allowing us to liberate and to dissolve the negative karmas with the people who we have soul karma with, and to be with it, even though everybody wants to just get out of a difficult situation when it gets difficult. But the more you can rest and be in that situation until everybody can say, okay, peace, our karma is done, now we can move on. Do you find
yeah.
yourself given this kind of advice when you deal with people in relationship astrology?
Definitely. I mean, I have myself Venus square Pluto, so it's like one of the worst
Uh-huh.
aspects you can have.
Right. You've
Uh,
got that Venus in the 10th house in the sign of Leo.
yeah, so I think that's why now I have a lot of good advice that I can give, because it's one of my biggest lessons to learn.
Mm.
And yeah, I say the same, like really see what you can learn from the other person, you know.
Mm. Mm.
For me, it's like, because it's in Pluto, I have this mixed up thing with like darker type of
Mm.
people that I attract. So I saw someone talking about Beauty and the Beast, you know, and this is a really
Mm.
good example that either, you know, when I was younger, I was the difficult one, and then
Yep.
it switched. And then it's like, I want to help people that have this heavy energy and transmute it. And maybe that was the same with you and your
Yeah.
relationship with Saturn there, you know. It's like you feel this commitment to
Mm.
help somebody get through it, or they feel, so very often it kind of switches.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
one person shows it and then it's
It
turned, like,
switches.
yeah,
Totally, totally. Because there's so much that we can learn from bonding at the soul level. And it's a frightening thing for anybody who's trying to keep all the control in their life. And you have this person who is being themselves. You can't stop them from being themselves, and you can't stop them from prodding around at the places that they are karmically destined to poke your bear with, you know. I find that the longer you can go through those kinds of things, the more you get out of them. But I should be careful to say that because I'm a very Saturn person. You know, maybe this is the kind of thing that each person has to feel out so that they're, you know, when you invite somebody who's got Pluto conjunct your moon and you're, you know, maybe there's something that's bonding you at some level, but like, I mean, if you're being abused, if you have invited someone into your life who is actually their karmic destiny is to make you realize that they are not supposed to be in your life, that is definitely a thing that has to be accounted for everybody watching. You know, these things do happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think in a way, I do feel that there's a slight sense of predestiny. So sometimes you have to get through a painful situation, or you have to go through it in order to learn from it. And again, that's kind of related to the past life. So, and the higher, actually, the funny thing is when you're in this between level, so you just start the spiritual journey, you speed up the karmic process. So it's like, every time people come to you and show you lessons, because the universe is like, yay, okay, you're ready.
You're into it. Oh, you're listening. Yeah. All right. Let's start throwing some darts at you.
It's
Beautiful.
like one after another. And you're like, what? So that, because people think that when you start this journey, it's going to be super easy. You're going to feel like very peaceful, but it takes a lot of work to get to a state where you kind of peaceful where you are. Like you have to go through the messy bit where like karma is being thrown in your face kind of
totally thing. It's kind of an ironic thing that, you know, in yoga we consider that ether is the spirit and then earth is the material, and then in the middle of it is the fire element of the fire chakra, and you want to sit in the agni, the fire of burning and liberating your karma. That's actually the most important part of the alchemical process. It's not necessarily getting the gold, and it's not necessarily developing the lead. You know, really the most important part is sitting in the tapas, the fire, the agni of whatever is the experience that is liberating you from the karma of gestation and of crystallization. And I think that that's something that really yoga, from my understanding, is basically trying to teach everybody. I'm studying somebody called Patanjali right now. He's a medieval writer, and he wrote the Yoga Sutras. And the first phrase in his Yoga Sutra, yoga is now. And then from there it says, yoga is seizing fluctuations of mind, seizing fluctuations in the field of consciousness, which means that you are resting and you are looking objectively at the moments when you are sitting in the fire and burning that karma. It's like being in a steam, you know, or like, you know, how a lot of people will do those huts where there's a fire full of rocks. I'm thinking like Native American people will do this, where they'll be in like a steam teepee, and you're in there and you're squirming around, and it's intense. I've done it once or twice, and you're just melting. Your spine is melting, and you're just like, bleh. But once you get out of there, the longer you're in it, the better you feel once you come out of it.
Crazy. It's like finding peace within the messy
bits. Right. That's the only real peace that you can find. That's why there's a difference between the yoga of, you know, inaction and escaping from the world is not peace. That is you acting and reacting to the compulsion of your mind to get away from a painful experience. You can sit with the pain. It's as if the pain isn't even there, in a certain way, in a spiritual sense.
Yeah, it's like even me. I mean, you still go through your things, and like before, I would definitely walk away. I would be like, I'm not going to deal with this. But now I'm trying to like sit with it. I mean, and really go through it, and why is it happening? And I think that's so important that people like learn how to sit with themselves and really tune into why things are happening. Because, you know, people, it's like everybody's so impatient. And me, myself, sometimes I've been super impatient. Like when I was younger, I was always very impatient. I wanted to get there now, be there now. And it's like, the more you raise the frequencies, the more you're like, okay, let's just go with the flow, see how things, and it's like the energies go through you. But yeah, you have to go to that middle bit. And this is where a lot of people, because when they start having their first spiritual experiences, they want to convince everyone, you know, it's like, I'll tell you what I've been through, you know, like I've seen this, and I've been through this phase where people are like, okay, she lost herself a little bit there.
Right. It's a funny
And
thing
then,
that, yeah. Oh, sorry, Michelle, go ahead. I didn't want to interrupt you.
no. And then it's like coming back in the circle. Like I was kind of who I was before now, but it's like you pick the right moments to talk about it or to tune into it, kind of.
Totally. And that's funny about when you pick up on a soul tribe, when you are hanging out with a bunch of people and we're all in the space of sharing what could be just the weirdest damn things, you know? I find it's an important thing, you know, even this idea of channeling past life, ancestral karmas and energies for yourself or for a client. For those who are interested in doing that kind of thing, really, you know, there is such a thing as bad information that takes you off of the course that you're trying to be at. And that's why I often recommend that people, if they're interested in scoping out past life energies, the scientific way of dealing with this very unscientific, intuitive consciousness, in my opinion, is to get different eyes on the situation. So you go to one astrologer and you say, I'd like a past life reading, and, you know, whatever you can do in that regard. And each astrologer has a certain jyoti. They got a certain filtration of the light of the unconscious that you're perpetuating at them, because they have their own energy. You know, I'm a Leo rising. So when people come to me, they're getting what a Leo rising would say about their chart. But if they go off and they talk to Michele Olree, they might, you know, they'll find that now it's a Scorpio rising who's integrating and understanding and interpreting that backdrop of karma through Michelle's own way. So would you agree that it's a good thing? It's not an unsafe thing to scope the very mystical realities of your past life, talking about it, putting it out there with trusted people who can hold the space for respecting the consciousness that you're trying to get to figure out for yourself, but ultimately have one hair of objectivity when you're talking to each person. You know, I mean, it's an experiment. And when you're doing an experiment, you don't want to be skeptical, because then you're going to start messing with the unfolding of the chemistry of the experiment. What you do is you hold your skepticism while you're in the experiment, and then apply skepticism to the open results that you allowed yourself to give. And then you go to another intuitive and you do the same thing. And eventually they're going to land on similar places. You know, after you see 10 intuitive past life people, there's going to be lines that meet in every single one, and you develop on it more and more as you move through it. Does that make sense, the way I've kind of laid that out?
No, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. I feel that, you know, going to different people, I think it's a really good thing, because everybody can give you like a little bit of a different perspective. So like you said, if they go to you, you give them your perspective, and that can help them at that time in their life. And then they're, you know, it's in different times in your life, sometimes you connect to different people. So it's same with YouTube. Like for a while, you listen to this person because you connect to that person, and that person can help you get through a certain situation. And then you go to someone else, maybe that at that time can give you the answers that you need then. But also, I always say that, you know, what I say or you say or anyone says, I always say, listen to your own intuition after that, and see what really resonates with you, because if you put too much heaviness on someone else to give you all the answers, you kind of give your power away at the same time. So it's better to see it as someone who gives you a little advice in order to tune into your own divinity.
Totally. You know, what's very interesting is that there's a real duality here between the power seat being within you. And I would say that there's like the duality I'm going to roll with here is like the moon and the sun. The moon consciousness would be like going to an astrologer who's like a mother for you, who is asking you the critical questions in a loving way. Like, do you feel that? Is this where you are? How do you feel about that? And they are putting the power seat on you, where you are the questioner asking this person, and they're compassionately guiding you to find the answers in yourself. Let's call that the moon type of astrologer. And then there's a solar astrologer, which a lot of the Vedic people, I think, Vedic Indian astrology really caters to more of this, like, you know, I've been to Indian astrologers. You know, one guy was called Maharaj. Maha means great, and then Raj means like passionate soul consciousness. And he was an intense guy. And he hit me with this father energy. No. This is what you are. This is what you are. This is the thing that you should be going through. You thought it was this. Try thinking about it this way. No, your mind is being too compulsive. That's why you're thinking about it this way. Try to think about it this way, this way, this way. And I got something out of that. I got something out of that consciousness, although at the same time, like it was this particular guy was a little bit too extreme on it. Most Indian Jyotishis, every astrologer has a little bit of both. And I guess that this is my idea, is that as a client, for everybody watching in the audience, it might be useful for you to consider that you want to start thinking about how your astrologer applies their energy to your experience, and to consider that just whatever they are might not be the full picture. B, they are a part of the picture, no matter what their energy is. So it's good to be open to every astrologer's approach to describing what they think is your karma and your purpose and your meaning in life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm glad that makes sense to you, Michele. Do you often, like, I don't, because if somebody were to ask me, I would love to do it, but nobody ever asks me as an astrologer what my chart is. Do you ever have people ask you about your chart? Probably not, I guess, because most people who come to us for astrology are not astrologers themselves.
No, actually, I mean, sometimes on the YouTube channel, they ask like, oh, what's your sun, or what's your ascendant? Or I do find it's very funny. I do attract clients with a quite similar chart to me. So sometimes I get so many Scorpio sun, Scorpio rising, and then I'm opening another client. I'm like, no way, this is too crazy.
Again,
like I do think that, you know, you attract people that see themselves in you in a way. I don't know if you have the same experience.
I think I do. What's interesting to me is that I kind of feel I have Chiron in Leo, and I'm a Leo rising. Maybe it's possible, especially because it's the rising sign. You know, your rising sign being Scorpio, and you having 2 planets in Scorpio. It kind of makes sense that maybe the planets are acting as a collector point, or at least, you know, it's like a beacon. People, when they see Michele doing your thing on YouTube, they could see the Pluto and they could see the moon, and they're probably compelled to contact you. And lo and behold, they've got Scorpio placements themselves, because that's something that they're looking to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, you have Scorpio sun as well. So
yes,
it's like
absolutely.
Transformative energy, and not, I guess it's for people that are not afraid to, that are ready to see themselves. Because with the type of a Pluto or Scorpio energy, same probably as you with your clients, you dive like kind of quite deep.
Yep.
So it's not staying to the surface. So when I'm with someone, I will kind of dig deep, and but I try to do it in a light way. So I try to transmute it. It's the Pluto with Juno that gives it a little bit of innocent vibe. So I'm trying to not make it too intense, because that would make the sessions like really heavy, I guess. So it's better to like make it a bit uplifting, and also put the energy of the highest potential. So I would look at someone's chart and look what is there. So I would write down, for example, jobs, and 9 out of 10 times it's a job they were already thinking about or already doing.
Cool.
So like it matches the energy. But sometimes you get someone that does completely different thing. They want to do it, but they're like, but I got into this other side in life. How do I get there? So,
very interesting. I love the idea of, I really consider both you and I to be Plutonian astrologers in a certain way. Me being Leo rising, and I have the Sun and Mars and Pluto all conjunct. I make a joke, and I try not to be too heavy with it, but I often like to make a joke where when we're talking astrology, somebody will see that I've got Sun, Mars, Pluto, and Scorpio, and I'll say, yes, hello, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Pluto. I'll be your antagonist for this evening. I like to hit people with it. I like to be Pluto. Would you like to meet Pluto? You can meet him right now. And I think it's interesting that for people who come to me, I'm ruled by Venus. Venus is my Atmakaraka in Vedic astrology. So I do try to apply the lightness of approach that you're talking about, but I always invite people to deal with Pluto if you wanted to. I appreciate in you that you being this similarly Plutonian person, maybe I would almost categorize you as, having Plutonian heavy content, but your approach is light.
Yeah.
So that the person can draw the Plutonian data that you have for them in the way that makes them feel comfortable. Yeah,
because it's strange. I think having this Plutonic energy, and when I speak to people with heavy Pluto energies as well, it's like you feel this heaviness behind your eyes, like you're observing the whole surroundings, And I sometimes when I look at someone, I feel that it's too intense, You look at someone, you're like, okay, I feel, and people can sense that you look right through them, It's like when I was younger, I always thought like, okay, these psychics that, they have these really scary eyes, like penetrating through people. But like sometimes I try to look away a little bit, because it's like when you do have this intense Pluto energy, people tend to read the room like quite heavily, and people can subconsciously tell.
I mean, people can just feel what's kind of going on there, right, in that conversation. Wonderful, Michele. I'm interested in something that's kind of like moving through my consciousness is, I almost want to, I'll extend this to you now. By me doing this interviews, I'm kind of doing this, eventually I might want to, astrology is a burgeoning movement, especially because YouTube is catching fire in the astrology community of the world today, where everybody can go on YouTube and they don't need to necessarily read a dusty old book and to, like how I got into astrology, I read a certain book. It was called Sextrology. And I read about Scorpio man. And I've got my rising lord, Sun, Mars, and Pluto in Scorpio. So I got a lot of Scorpio energy. So when I read about Scorpio in sextrology, it talks about having long, wiry arms and the feminine psyche of Scorpio inside of a man's consciousness. I read all of this and I was like, okay, this is more real than I could have ever thought that it was. Now, I got lucky there because I had the stellium and I could see the connection and there was no doubt in my mind. Now, for anybody who's got a mild interest in astrology, for them to read a book and try to find some kind of information that would make them have that aha moment, it doesn't happen for everybody. But with YouTube, somebody can look up my sun sign on YouTube and to read, and you've got a person who you are enjoying how they say it to you, and it can tap into your mind in an easier and a different way. So the world of YouTube is changing the landscape of astrology, growing it bigger. And what I want to do eventually, Michele, is have like a database. I'm going to make a website, and I want to have a database of different types of astrologers. For example, you are an intuitive astrologer who is comfortable talking about past lives, comfortable talking about Plutonian energy. And for me to even show these main guts of your chart on this website so that the astrology world of clients can see this list and say, I'd like to try someone with Scorpio rising with Pluto on their ascendant as my astrologer. Would you be interested in being a part of something like that? It's very half-baked right now. I'm kind of thinking that this is something I might do a couple years down the line. Would you be interested in being a part of something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's talk about it and see how it develops. But I like to connect as well with other astrologers because I think it's nice to share experience. And like you said, everybody's looking for a different type of energy that kind of matches or resonates with their energy at the moment. So yeah, I mean, some want to connect with me, but a strong Pluto person can also really repulse.
Yes,
so people need
sure.
to really pick you to do the astrology chart, because otherwise it's going to be a little bit like, ooh.
No kidding, for sure. And this, for our audience watching, it just does go to show, always keep in mind that we are astrologers and we are all trying to get on a platform where, everybody wants to go to an astrologer who's been doing it for 20 years so that that the astrologer has practice. But how else do you become an astrologer who's been doing it for 20 years, but by first being an astrologer who's only done it for 3 years and who is looking to walk that path and to develop on it? For me, I often like to tell people as an astrologer, I've done 4 years of schooling, and as in Vedic astrology. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. The 4th year was like an apprenticeship where my teacher said I was studying for 3 years with my teacher. And then on the 4th year, he said, okay, sink or swim, go out and do it. And what my teacher said, or how I conveyed this, is that I was nervous at first. I didn't want to start a business, start bringing people in, and then be like, okay, everybody, I'm a super professional astrologer now, and I know everything, and come to see me, and I'm going to give you a great thing. And the first 20 charts that I did were a little bit patchy, and I was nervous about that because I knew when this is me speaking now to anybody in our audience who wants to be an astrologer and is looking to get out there as a profession. I myself, for my first 20, 25 charts, I had a few that just did not go well, because I was learning to grapple with it. But it worked out okay. And even some of the ones that didn't go well, they have come back to me because I started off with this caveat. And I'm still in this consciousness. I'll explain kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
Every person that it comes to me, I like to tell them for now that I've been studying astrology for a long time, but I am still pretty early in my practice. And, this is something that I'd like to for you to keep in mind. Thankfully, because I do YouTube, people either, I don't care because they've seen how I do, I'll talk about, I've got, natal things like Pluto in the first house. I'll talk about it in texts, and someone will watch this video and say, I need a chart done from you. And so when I tell them, this is something that I am learning to, I'm in my own process of growing into this, but they're okay with it because they know that they've seen me doing my thing on YouTube, and they just trust where I'm coming from with it. So I think it's important to be able to tell people that I am still in a process of initiating my journey as an astrologer.
Yeah.
There's a nice interviewer that I interviewed. Her name's Jess Lanyadoo. And she said that for the first 7 years of her doing astrology, she told people that I'm still initiating myself in this practice. So you can come to me and we'll do a reading. Just keep in mind that I'm still getting my bearings on this ancient art and science. And she is a Capricorn rising. And she said that she did that for 7 years.
Wow.
Right? So you get that. It's like she started at a certain point and said, okay, now I'm initiating my process. And she's a Capricorn. She knew that she wanted to have a point where she said she started. And as years went on, once she got past the 7-year mark, because Saturn has 7-year quadrations where 7-year processes tend to be a Saturnian. Saturn is the number 7. Do you relate with that? If I should ask? Do you relate with 7 as being related to Saturn?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I wanted to check if I was on the right. So I know numerology is its own thing, but Jess Lanyadoo told me that for the first 7 years, she told people this caveat, which is that I'm still grappling with this as an art and science. Do you find that this is a useful approach, A, for the clients to know about the astrologer, and B, for the astrologer to be open about? Is that something that you've thought about?
I mean, even me, like astrology itself, I haven't done that long.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's what you feel comfortable with, because I think the Capricorn energy is really strict for themselves, and also a bit of Scorpio energy is really strict, like kind of like want to do it perfect. But I think for people, I mean, it depends who comes to you.
You're right.
But it's also about trusting that you can bring the right message to someone. Obviously, if you go to someone a bit younger, they kind of know that you haven't done it for super long.
Beautiful.
So,
good answer. I appreciate that, Michelle.
Yeah, I don't think like for the ones that are watching, I don't think you necessarily have to say it unless you maybe like the first year, when you just start.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, it was like I charged less. So that was kind of my way of, I'm new. And then slowly I started being more confident because people said, oh, this was life-changing, or, oh, this was really good.
Right.
And that came confirmation to me. So I don't know, like probably what I can recommend everybody is to ask for maybe feedback after the session. Like, cool. I just had a few that the kind of tests. And we did it for a really cheap price. And I asked for what they thought of the session, or what they were thinking I was maybe missing, or what I should do. And then, you can kind of grow into becoming a little bit more professional in a sense, and develop maybe your own style.
Very good, Michelle. You've totally
were you thinking about that?
Yeah. You totally got where I was coming from, because the reason it's a touchy thing, because, if you say that, you're not a great professional at what you're doing yet, people are going to say, so what am I paying money for again? And there's like a bit of that sort of consciousness. So I know that this is a touchy thing, but I'm glad for you to just confidently say it the way you did it, because you do provide a check. You did provide a check for yourself by offering lower money and asking for feedback, so that people can see that you're young and you're still getting on your feet with this sort of thing. But you developed confidence through the feedback that you received from your work. And that was this organic unfoldment of you getting to where you want to be. I think that this is an important conversation for anybody who is wanting to become a professional astrologer. Because like I said, it's hard to jump in because everybody's got a perfectionism impulse. I don't know enough yet. I haven't studied enough. I haven't studied
Yeah,
enough to do it. But when will you have ever studied enough? At some point, you just got to, it's like in martial arts, you can read in a book about all the flows that you've got to go through, but eventually you just got to go out there and start sparring and getting hit in the head. And that's when you really become a martial artist. And vis-a-vis, same thing with astrology. The only way that you'll really get there is by doing it.
absolutely. And do you still have like Saturn opposite Chiron as
Yeah.
well?
Yep.
Because this is kind of like the imposter syndrome placement where you're like,
Interesting.
it's like Saturn saying, work hard. And Chiron is like, not good enough, not good enough. So,
Yeah, that's interesting because it's the Chiron's in my first house. And
yeah.
that's one of my great spiritual challenges in my life, is this sort of like almost like a small man syndrome. Like, I need to show everybody that I've got a lot going on and that I am confident and that I can do it. And
Yeah.
the Chiron in me wants to be able to do that, while the Saturn in me has to have these checks, has to show I've gone through this school, I've gone through this, I've put the 7 years in, like Jess Lanyadoo said. That's something that I kind of apply myself to. And I know that once I've gone through this certain amount of time, I can kind of see from my, to be honest with you, I really relate to what you're saying, which is that putting a number of that 7 years is useful in its own way. But really, I feel like now I'm doing the astrology that I'm doing, and I feel confident about it now. Once that switch happened, it's just been what it is since that happened.
And
I wonder if I
kind of
answered.
like tricky. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I was wondering if I answered what you were getting at with the Chiron Saturn conjunction.
Yeah, because I know that there's a whole generation, especially like kind of our age, around 30s, they have to do like with displacement of not being good enough. Yeah, so it's strange because on one hand you have the fake it until you make it kind of thing.
Right.
And I don't believe completely you have to show also what you know, but the thing is that nobody knows how much you prepare. So I would suggest that if you're new, just really prepare the chart and take a lot of time before and take on less clients and really so you feel confident before you start. So at the beginning, I really took like 1 or 2 hours before to really dive into someone's chart, learn, open my books. So I feel that I'm prepared when I talk to someone. Obviously, from the other hand, I have my intuition that kind of saves me when I don't know exactly what is going on. But I feel that you have to kind of start somewhere. So I think being prepared, so not arriving unprepared in a reading when you just start, I would really make sure that you read into everything. And
it gives you that confidence.
That gives you the confidence. So like write it on a paper and then just go through it with someone, and you will see people's faces. They're either going to be like whatever, or they're going to be like, no way.
Right. Wonderful. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I relate to that as a musician. People often, they ask me, if I get nervous when I go on stage and I do my thing, and I say no, because we've been rehearsing and practicing. I'm excited to get out there and do the thing. If I was nervous, then I don't know, I guess, I don't know. Sometimes I do feel nervous and I still do the thing. Maybe that's part of that fake it till you make it energy. But ultimately, how I feel about it is different from what comes out, which is me performing and everybody enjoying what I do. And if at first I wasn't even as good at it, but I plucked along, I let go of the feeling in my throat like I might not be good enough, and I just sang my heart out. And because I did that, I've been on stage enough now that I know that I can do it, and that I have the confidence to do it. And there's no thought about, like, should I jump in now? And I think that I've had the same experience with astrology. There was a little while where I wasn't exactly sure where I was at on it. And after time has gone by, I don't even think about it. And I don't second guess myself in the way that I did when I first started.
Yeah. Did you ever have, because this happened to me before, that people give the wrong time. So the chart is not, and this can be a little bit tricky, when you check in with some planets with a client. And I think for the astrologers that are listening, that sometimes you get someone that, doesn't have the time quite right. So if you
Totally.
notice that a few placements are not really
Resonating.
okay, it's better to read the overall energy of the planets, right? Because this also happens sometimes. So there's like different scenarios that can kind of, put you in a place like, what are you going to do now?
Right, totally. That's a good one, Michelle. That's an important thing to talk about because it shows that sometimes you'll do, when you start getting into this astrology stuff, really do like 5 charts before you decide, okay, I suck at this and I got to stop because none of these are going right. Because you could do the first 1 or 2 charts and you might have a lemon where someone has their ascendant at like 25 degrees of Sagittarius and they didn't get it from a birth record. And you start talking about what Sagittarius is like, and they're like, yeah, I don't resonate with this at all. Meanwhile, they were actually a Capricorn rising. They just didn't have their time right. And so you're trying to talk about what it's like having this Sagittarius ascendant personality and all the things of the houses, and they don't resonate with it at all. It might not mean that you're a bad astrologer. It might just be that bad lemon of the person having an inaccurate birth time. So that's an important thing that I think to consider for sure. Now, Michelle, my friend, you and I have been talking for quite a while. We're steering past, well past our hour mark now, which I love. I should say that I really appreciate you hanging out with me today and sharing your knowledge with me. You've got a wonderful consciousness as an intuitive person and as someone who is digging in your heels and doing the science of astrology. I really appreciate it. Now, I've been kind of going through a bit of our questions. It looks like we have somebody named Teresa. She asked if it's easier to tap into intuition if there is space between yourself and others. I'm wondering if she means like if, you and I are on opposite sides of the planet. I'm in Canada and you're in the Netherlands. When you do, like, you must do online consultations with people.
Absolutely.
Do you find that, like, have you ever done an astrology chart with someone in the room?
Yes, not many times. But yes, I've done it also face to face. Yeah.
Right. Do you find that you pick up more intuitively when you're in the room with the person? Or, to be honest, my experience is that, once I'm looking at the chart, I'm seeing the person, like really seeing a person's face says all you need to say in terms of intuition. So I'll ask you, do you find that being in the same room as a person during an astrology session gives you more intuitive data, or do you feel like you're where you need to be when you do it online?
I don't think it makes a huge difference for me. So I'm wearing this like necklace that's kind of like stopping, because there are some streams, right? Like when you do it online, but I always, even before I do a reading, this is where I already tap into the person. So I kind of close my eyes and I pretend I'm putting lines to that person.
Wow.
So that's kind of how I tune into someone. I mean, obviously you need someone's permission to do that, but this is how you can tap into anyone in the world. It's like a Google online. You just type a name and you find this person, you tune in, and I start writing. Cool. And I just write down stuff like before. So I have some notes to begin with. I check their chart. So there shouldn't in reality be a difference between being with someone face to face, because even if you're face to face, you can also be distracted by like how they act, or I think online is more detached than seeing face to face. Yeah.
I feel like when I've done sessions in the room as well, And I can find that, when it's online, you're far enough away from each other, you can visually draw the lines that you're talking about, and you can see their face and it's there. And really, like, the connection, I've never felt lacking on it. I've experienced being in the same room as a person, and when they have an emotional reaction, I kind of like get slugged with it when I'm in the same room as them. Me, Mr. Pluto, Mr. like, I'm going to hit you with this and that. When I do it online like this, I should be careful how I say that, because I don't hit people with the hammer too hard, unless that's the consciousness that they're looking for. But no matter what, when I am here and it's online, I can see them reacting, and I can sometimes, sessions can be so emotionally heavy. And by being online, I find that I'm in my own field. My own electromagnetic field is independent of their electromagnetic field that I'm seeing in this little video screen. And when I'm in the room, I find I can be like, oh, and I can get hit with it, which is part of that's its own dimension. I think even really, maybe there is something there, but I certainly don't feel lacking for intuitive information when I'm doing it online.
Yeah.
Would you say
no,
that?
absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. I think that's it's almost more calming because like you said, when you're with someone, you go because you kind of tune into that person, right? So
and
it's
maybe
nice
some
to be in
people
your own space.
I think maybe some people could be well served to be that kind of astrologer and counselor. I often talk about the difference between Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. Sigmund Freud would have people lying on the chair and they're facing this way, and Sigmund Freud is behind them with this fatherly voice talking to them from this objective perspective. Whereas Carl Jung would sit with them and look them in the eyes and hold their hand and say, I'm here with you. What is it that you want to go through? And it's like, again, it's that father and mother approach. And I think that maybe, again, this is just us waxing philosophic about what for our audience, if you want to be an astrologer, there are so many ways to think about it, so many ways to approach what your practice is. Now, one of the last things I want to say from our comments here, I should say, I appreciate everybody here doing the comments, and it's nice to see people engaging with us during this session. My friend Teresa wanted to add here, and thank you, Teresa. You've been having some lovely comments. She adds that some people, when they start astrology, they practice at a homeless shelter for free, just to kind of get yourself getting the wheels rolling a little bit. And it's nice because it's for homeless people. For you to do that, that's a good idea. I think that's a great idea for anybody to consider. Do you agree there, Michele?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely amazing. I never thought of it.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really nice way to serve. You can help people so much with that. So I think that's an amazing idea, actually. Thank you,
Totally.
Teresa.
Yeah, that was a great call, Teresa, for sure. Now, Michele, this has been a great session. I love talking with you. You've got a wonderful personality, and I'd love to stay in touch with you. Maybe we could do something like this again. Maybe we could do a specific talk about something. Now, what do you think of us calling it a day for our session today?
I think it's been so wonderful. And thanks everyone for watching. No, it's been a really easy talk. So I definitely think we should do it again. Maybe have a specific topic, or if anyone is like, hey, let's talk about this and go through that. I would be totally up for that.
Awesome, Michele. Well, thank you so much. You've got a great open-minded consciousness. You're exactly the type of spiritually minded person who's also looking to dig into some turf on earth and to find practical things to bring from the hero's journey within. And I really appreciated you hanging out with me on my channel today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been really great. I mean, you're as well, really open-minded, and I think it's a wonderful to meet someone else who does astrology, but also have like the spiritual consciousness, because after all, it kind of all comes together. It's like they're all like different tools to grow spiritually or to grow with self-development.
Right.
So I think it's really amazing. So also thank you for this interview and arranging it.
My pleasure, Michele. It was a really good time. So for everybody watching, I'm Dustin Cormier, and this has been How to Rock Astrology. Michele, if you'd like to say your full name here, because I don't want to say your last name wrong. If you'd like to mention it now, you can feel free.
Okay, yeah, my name is Michele Olree. I mean, you can find my YouTube channel like Love for Intuitive Astrology or my website HowtorockAstrology.com, and I mean, check it out and see what resonates.
And then feel free to give Michele a call. You can find Michelle's contact information if you'd like to get a reading from her, and to tap into her past life consciousness, or to just have a plain old astrological language consultation. Feel free to look up Michele on her website, loveforostrology.com. Is that correct? I think that I put loveforointuitiveastrology.com on my picture there, and I'm going to see if maybe I can change that, but it'll be loveforostrology.com to get a hold of Michele. So thanks everybody for watching, and Michele, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me. I'll stay in touch with you, and maybe we'll get another one of these going soon. Okay.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone. It was really amazing.
Awesome. Take care, Michele, and thanks for watching, everybody.